What is good and what is up, y'all? It's your boy here, Jay, back and better than ever with another episode of Jay's Point. After week 2 of the NFL is in the books, week 3 is today. MLB races are hotter than ever, and college football week 3 is also in the books, all right here on JPA. What's up, y'all, and welcome back to another episode of Jay's Point. After episode 49, to be very exact, we got a lot to chop it up about. It's been about a week since we last talked. We got the NFL, MLB, and college football in this episode specifically. We'll be talking about more sports in the future, but right now for this episode, episode 49, we got NFL, MLB, and college football. So let's get right into it. NFL Week 2 is in the books as the Bills, Eagles, Packers, Chargers, Rams, Bucks, Niners, Cardinals, Colts, and Bengals all improved to 2-0 as the Chiefs, Texans, Bears, Dolphins, Giants, Jets, Panthers, Titans, Saints, and Browns are all 0-2 entering week 3. Although context must be given as there is various storylines through the first 2 weeks as we got week 3 today, but let's go ahead and get into the scores of week 2 before we get into anything storyline-esque. Starting on last Thursday, we had the Commanders go into Lambeau and get taken out by the Packers 27-18. Jay Love had 19 of 31, 292 with 2 touchdowns. Awesome day for Jay Love, just been efficient all season. And Josh Jacobs, another game with a rushing touchdown. Moving on to Sunday, we had the Jaguars visiting the Bengals in Cincy, and they gave them all they could handle as Cincy just scraped away with a dub, 31-27. But coming out of that was something we are going to talk about later in this episode, an injury to this Bengals squad. But Trevor Lawrence went 24 of 42, 271 with 3 tutties, and ETN, resurgence year for ETN, 14 carries, 71 yards, as well as Jamar Chase, 14 receptions, 165 yards, and 1 touchdown. There's a reason why he was chosen in various fantasy leagues to be the number 1 overall pick. Moving on to the Giants and Cowboys, this game was an absolute barn burner. Craziness going on throughout Jerry's world as the Cowboys, again, another scrape away victory for a team as they win 40-37 over the Giants. The Giants fall to 0-2 as the Cowboys improve to 1-1. Russ, though, didn't go down without a fight, going 30 for 41, 450 yards passing with 3 tutties. Goodness gracious. I mean, it was just an absolute crazy game to tie the game. I mean, unreal touchdown. I can't say enough about, the fight that Russ put up in that game, but it just wasn't enough as Braden Aubrey hit a 60, what was it? I think it was, I believe, a 65-yard field goal to win the game. Just insane. Just across the board, there was just craziness going on. Field goals from, Africa. Resurgence of Russell Wilson in a Giants uniform. There's just lots going on in this game, but the Cowboys scrape away with that dub. Man, like I said, can't say enough about Russ and what he did. 450 yards, y'all. Realize that. Russell Wilson in what, year 12, 13? I don't know what it is. 450 yards passing after he had that game 1 where it seemed as if Russell Wilson is not, capable of playing the quarterback position anymore, but he comes out the next game and throws for 450 yards. Jamal Williams had 18 carries, 97 yards, and a touchdown. Malik Neighbors, 9 receptions, 167 yards receiving, and 2 touchdowns. And that touchdown late in the game to tie it to force it to overtime. Crazy game, y'all. Moving on to the Bears at Lions. The Lions put absolute belt to cheeks on the Bears, 52-21. Just showing up Ben Johnson in his coaching return, his head coaching return, obviously being the head coach of the Bears, now returning to the Lions after being the OC for the Lions last season. Just a tough showing, but Goff throws for 5 tutties, going 23 of 28, 334 for 5 tutties, and Jahmyr Gibbs, 12 carries, 94 yards, a touchdown, and Odunze also had, I think, a career day, 7 receptions for 128 yards and 2 tutties. The Rams go ahead and take out the Titans 33-19 as they go ahead and improve to 2-0. Matthew Stafford throws for 2 touchdowns, 23 of 33, 298, 2 touchdowns. Tony Pollard, 20 carries for 92 yards, and Devontae Adams, 6 receptions for 106 yards and a tutty. Patriots go ahead and take out the Dolphins in Miami, 33-27, as Tua goes ahead and drops that game. Even though they played on Thursday as well, we're going to go ahead and get into that as well. 26 of 32, 315, 2 tutties. Ramondre Stevenson, 11 carries, 54 yards, with Tyreek Hill, 6 receptions for 109 yards. Getting into the 49ers at Saints, they went ahead into the Superdome and took out the Saints 26-21 as Mac Jones had 26 of 39, 279, 3 tutties. Alvin Kamara, 21 carries for 99 yards, and Juwan Jennings, 5 receptions for 89 yards and a touchdown. Mac Jones, in relief of Brock Purdy, doing a great job. He's going to also play this week, so let's see what happens with the Niners continuing on this trend, and playing these teams. Will they continue to win? I mean, they're not the toughest schedule. Obviously, we have lamented about the strength of schedule for the 49ers, so these are winnable games for the Niners. They need to continue to stack these wins. The Bills go ahead and take out the Jets last week, 30-10, as Josh Allen went 14 of 25, 148. James Cook went 21 carries of 132, 2 touchdowns, and Garrett Wilson, 4 receptions for 50 yards. But Josh Allen bounces back from a bloody nose and early on, and it seemed as if it was broken, but showing his grit there and just really showing the dominance of the Bills over the Jets in the previous years since Josh Allen has been at the helm. Seahawks go ahead into Steelers land and take them out 31-17 as Sam Darnold goes 22 of 33, 295 with 2 touchdowns. Kenneth Walker, 13 carries, 105 yards, 1 touchdown, and Jackson Smith-Njigba, 8 receptions for 103 yards. But we can't gloss over the blunder of the kickoff that happened with George Halani. He turned a touchdown from the Steelers' blunder. It's hard to explain what happened, but we'll go ahead and show the video. Just absolutely insane. Just absolutely insane what happened. I mean, this apparently hasn't happened in over 60, 70 years, according to, NFL Network. To have this happen where the ball goes into the end zone and the man doesn't touch it, insane. I can't recall that ever happening when I played, because it's just one of those things where he thought the rule was obviously the old rule, and where the ball goes into the end zone, it's a touchback. Well, no, it actually rolled into the end zone, number one, so it landed in the, a landing zone, quote unquote. That's what they call it nowadays. And from that point on, he just left it there in the end zone, and it was a touchdown. So that's just wild, guys. That happened this past weekend. But hopefully it doesn't happen again. I don't think it'll happen again this season or ever again, now that, he made himself an example. But ultimately, the Seahawks take advantage of that, and really, I think that's the reason why they won. That was a big turning point in that game. Moving on to the Browns at Ravens, as the Ravens just absolutely dominated the Browns 41-17, as Lamar Jackson had 19 of 29, 225, 4 touchdowns. Quinshon Judkins, 10 carries at 61 yards, and Zay Flowers, 7 receptions for 75 yards. Moving on to the Broncos at Colts, an absolute crazy game as the Colts go ahead and take this game over the Broncos 29-28, as Daniel Jones goes ahead and has another fantastic game, 23 of 34, 316, 1 touchdown. Jonathan Taylor, 25 carries, 165, and Troy Franklin goes ahead and gets 8 receptions for 89 yards and 1 touchdown, but all for naught, as Spencer Schrader converts from a 45-yard kick, 45 yards after a penalty on a 60-yard miss. A lot of controversy there on what happened, and leverage is what they were calling it. I'm going to go ahead and show the video to you guys. It's kind of iffy. A lot of people, quote-unquote, use leverage to try and get over, but that's the rule, and they went ahead and they called it, and the Colts took advantage, took another field goal, and they won the game. And that's fine with me because, truthfully, the Broncos in my division, I'm all for the Broncos losses. Moving on to the Panthers visiting the Cardinals in Arizona. The Cardinals scrape away with a 27-22 dub as Bryce Young went 35 of 55, guys, 328, 3 touchdowns. Chuba Hubbard, 10 carries, 38 yards, and Territoa McMillan, 6 receptions for 100 yards. But I just don't think Bryce Young throwing the ball 55 times is going to be okay. It's going to get you dubs, and obviously didn't get you dubs here. But yeah, it was a great try for a comeback for Carolina, but it was just all for naught. But yeah, that's probably ultimately why he threw 55 times, because of the comeback. But again, I don't know if 55 times is gonna do it. Moving on to the Super Bowl rematch as the Eagles took out the Chiefs in Arrowhead 20-17 as Patrick Mahomes went 16-29, 187, one touchdown pass, as well as Saquon going 22 carries, 88 yards and a tutty. And Travis Kelce having 4 receptions for 61 yards, but the Eagles defense absolutely shined like they did in the Super Bowl, and just went into Arrowhead and proved everybody that they are the Super Bowl champions over the Chiefs, and it wasn't a fluke. Moving on to the Falcons at Vikings for the Sunday night matchup, as the Falcons absolutely dominated the Vikings 22-6. As J.J. McCarthy went 11 for 21, 158 with 2 interceptions. Bijan Robinson with 22 carries and 143, and Justin Jefferson 3 receptions for 81 yards. But the story of this was J.J. McCarthy was actually not okay and not going to be starting this week, so that is going to be something we're going to get into here soon. But yeah, the Falcons went ahead and took out the Vikings in Skullland. Now moving on to the Monday night games, as we had a doubleheader. We went ahead and talked about the Chargers on my podcast. Go ahead and tune in, y'all. So Chargers Banter episode 2, go ahead. Like I said, tune in. Justin Herbert, absolutely fantastic game. Defense, 3 interceptions. We got the dub in division. Now it's on to the Broncos, but now we go into the Buccaneers at Texans, man, what a fight it was from the Texans, but the Buccaneers, what a comeback and what a rally late on as Baker Mayfield led them into a 20-19 dub as Baker went 25 of 38, 215, 2 touchdowns. Bucky Irving, 17 carries for 71 yards, and Mike Evans, 5 receptions for 56 yards. But man almighty, what a comeback from the Bucs. And now let's get into the Thursday night game that just happened a couple nights ago, as the Dolphins went ahead into Buffalo and actually put up a fight. Surprising. But the Bills took it to the Dolphins and showed their dominance once again for their in-division foe, winning 31-21, improving to 3-0, and the Dolphins falling to 0-3. Josh Allen, 22 of 28, 213, 3 touchdowns. James Cook, 19 carries for 108 yards and a touchdown. And Dalton Kincaid, breakout game of the year, 5 receptions for 66 yards and a touchdown. Like I said, Josh Allen, 3 TD passes, just unreal, continuing to show his dominance, not only in the fact that he's the MVP of last year, but also in the division. Last week he did it against the Jets. We just talked about that earlier, and then now doing it against the Dolphins, just continuing to dominate in the AFC East, and almost the new Tom Brady of that division, if you want to go there. But obviously there's levels to this. But it was an absolutely crazy week 2, a crazy start to week 3. So let's see what we got in store for us today. But there's just a ton of storylines to get into from week 2. So let's go ahead and get into that, y'all. The storylines that hit this week, beginning with the injury of Joe Burrow. Joe Shiesty going to be out for 3 to 4 months with a turf toe, guys. Not going to be good. Joe Burrow went down with turf toe, as he will miss the most of the season, being out for 3 to 4 months. The Bengals, who are 2-0, scraped by with a couple wins, but now their season looks grim with their leader once again sidelined due to injury. Now moving on to J.J. McCarthy, also will be out for several weeks with a high ankle sprain, like we lamented earlier, after the week 2 loss to the Falcons 22-6. Now the Vikings and Bengals face off against each other in week 3 and will be starting Jake Browning and Carson Wentz. And Carson Wentz, also growing up a Minnesota Vikings fan, and now will be stepping into the throne of the starting quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings for a couple weeks. So it's going to be exciting for him, exciting moment for, the kid inside of Carson Wentz, as he talked about in an interview earlier this week. And it's going to be an exciting, battle of these backup quarterbacks. I don't want to call it battle of the mid by any means, because these guys are obviously in the NFL. But yeah, it's going to be exciting to see, obviously, a childhood dream of Carson Wentz being fulfilled to play in the Minnesota Vikings uniform, and then also Jake Browning. But it's also a battle of 2 really highly touted teams. One's 2-0, one's 1-1. So let's see what happens in this matchup. But moving on to the Washington Commanders quarterback, Jaden Daniels will also be out for this week's game. Washington will start Marcus Mariota against his former team, the Las Vegas Raiders. Daniels will be out with a knee sprain that looks to be back soon, so not looking too grim there. But not to mention the Niners have Brock Purdy out again for this week's game. Mac Jones, like I lamented earlier, got the dub last week, but looks to maintain a head of steam in the NFC West. But here are some other notable injuries that you guys might want to know that are out for this week's game, starting with quarterback Justin Fields. The Jets quarterback is going to be out this week with a concussion, so not looking good there. The DN Shamar Stewart for the Bengals has an ankle injury, will be out this week. Joey Porter Jr., cornerback for the Steelers, also will be out this week with a hamstring. Christian Gonzalez, safety for the Patriots, will also be out with a hamstring. Chris Godwin, Buccaneers, wide receiver, will be out with a ankle. J.C. Latham their tackle will be out. Titans tackle will be out with a hip. Evan Ingram, tight end for the Broncos, will be out with a back. Will Dissly will be out for the Chargers. Tight end for the Chargers will be out with a knee. Elijah Molden, safety for the Chargers as well, will be out with a hamstring. Chase Young, DN for the Saints, will be out with a calf. Deron Bland also out for the Cowboys with a foot. Michael Dana out for the Chiefs. Marcus Davenport out for the Lions. Isaiah Likely out for the Ravens with a foot. Patrick Ricard also out for the Ravens. Matt Milano out for the Bills, and also Ed Oliver out for the Bills this past week. So it's been a tough, couple weeks for a lot of teams. A lot of injuries have been, bugging these teams, and hopefully it doesn't affect, a lot of the star players. We've seen a lot of quarterbacks go down quite early. So I'm just hoping and praying for not only Joe Burrow and, obviously the guys that I named, but for all of the quarterbacks to continue their health throughout the entirety of the season. We always want to see the upper echelon of talent when it comes to these teams and full rosters. But I just pray for these guys, truthfully. I just hope for the best for all of them and their health and continuing throughout this season because, like I said, we want the upper echelon of talent. But let's go ahead and get into the Week 3 slate and some notable matchups. As there's got a lot of good games going forward here, guys. A lot of good games. A lot of matchups to take advantage in divisions. So I'm excited about it. But we got the Falcons visiting the Panthers this week. We got the Packers going to Cleveland. We got the Texans going to Jacksonville. We got the Bengals going to Minnesota Skull Land. Shout out to Pops. We got the Steelers going to Foxborough to play the Saints. So that'll be interesting to see Aaron Rodgers in Foxborough. We got the Rams and Eagles, a former last year's divisional matchup, which will be interesting. Jets at Buccaneers, but no Justin Fields there, so that should be an easy dub for the Bucs, but it is a tough defense for the Jets. Colts at Titans. Daniel Jones looking to take advantage of another 0-2 team, another team that's kind of just not, have their footing right now. And honestly, Daniel Jones has been playing the best ball that he has in his career because I think he has all of the things around him, right? The receiving core, the defense, the head coach, the line, and I think you're starting to see him excel. The Raiders at Commanders this week. That'll be an interesting one as Marcus Mariota will be facing his former team. Broncos at Chargers, obviously, bolt up. Saints at Seahawks, Cowboys at Bears, Cardinals at 49ers, Chiefs at Giants, and Lions at Ravens to go ahead and round out the week on Monday Night Football. Tons of great matchups, but the ones I'm paying attention to in specific are Bengals at Vikings, as like I said, Browning versus Wentz. We got Rams at Eagles, rematch of the divisional game last season. Raiders at Commanders, Marcus Mariota, obviously. Broncos at Chargers because we need to get 3 divisional wins within the first 3 weeks, and that'll be just a heavy advantage in the division. Bears at Cowboys. I'm interested to see what Caleb does against this Cowboys defense this week, and can the Cowboys go ahead and get this dub? Cardinals at Niners. That's going to be a great divisional rivalry matchup. And to round it out, Monday Night Football, Lions at Ravens. Going to be an exciting matchup for that Monday Night Football game. I'm excited for week 3, y'all, but it's time to lock in for the Chargers. 3-0, baby. That's what we're looking for right now. 3-0. Let's get right into it. But after the break, we will get into some MLB division talk as it's getting way too hot, way too sizzling right now, and as well as some college football. Let's get back to it. Welcome back, y'all, and let's get into some MLB and college football talk to round out this episode of JPA, episode 49 to be very exact. MLB division and wildcard races have never been hotter as all 3 division races are within 2 games of one another. But before we get into the division races, I want to give a big shout out to Mike Trout for going ahead and hitting his 400th home run of his career last night versus the Rockies. I mean, from everything he's dealt with, I just want to go ahead and give him the biggest shout out because I know that it's been a rough road for Mike. It's been a rough road for Trouty. For you guys that don't know, obviously I'm a big Padre fan, but I actually grew up being an Angel fan as well. My pops being an Angel fan, bringing me to games. This is back in Howie Kendrick days, back in Garrett Anderson days, back in Kendrys and Morales days, Jared Weaver. I can go down the K-Rod laundry list of, different Angels I've seen wear the uniform. But Trout, man, the loyalty that he's had to this organization and, wanting to try and win another ring with, he didn't win a ring with them, but trying to bring another World Series championship to Anaheim. It's just something you admire from a player, especially in this day and age when you don't see a lot of, loyalty. It's big time out of Trout. And you could see the emotion when he hit his home run. It's not only through the ups and downs of being loyal to this franchise and not necessarily getting the luck that he's kind of poured into as far as the effort that he, the luck that he deserves, of going to the postseason and all that kind of stuff. A lot of injuries throughout his career, and he's dealt with a lot of unfortunate things to happen at really unfortunate times. A lot of times it's been in the back end of the season or in times where they're, making races or making a push, right? The years that he was with Ohtani, there was a couple years they were actually in contention, but then, an injury happens of that sort or Ohtani gets hurt, right? And it was just a revolving door. And I just want to give, like I said, my love, my shout out to Trouty and everything he's done for this organization, everything he's done for Angel fans. It's second to none, and he deserves everything and more when it comes to, after his career, what he, accomplished will be what it was. But we all know that it should have been more because of all the injuries that have held him back, all the postseason games he didn't play, and, to have the talent and to put out the stats that he did, with limited postseason play and also, like I said, limited games and in that prime that he had from 2017 to, or not even 2017, 2014 to 2020, 2022, it was just something to behold. A little longer tangent, than I wanted for that, but it's Trouty and he deserves it. And I wanted to go ahead and give my love to him, give my shout out. And, like I said, 400th home run for Mike Trout. Also, Cal Raleigh is now the single-season home run king over Ken Griffey Jr. for the Seattle Mariners. Now has 57 in hitting that last night over the Astros. Big dub over the Astros, so that's awesome. Now let's get into the AL standings, the madness that I had been talking about with you guys, and what is going on with these standings. Let's get into the division right now with the AL East, as the Toronto Blue Jays are leading the New York Yankees by only 2 games and the Boston Red Sox by only 4 games. The Tampa Bay Rays and the Orioles are both out, and it's going to be interesting coming down to the wire here. AL Central, Detroit Tigers are now only 1 game above the Cleveland Guardians, y'all. Kansas City Royals are 7 games back, somewhat in contention for a wild card, but not really. Twins and White Sox are also eliminated. Man, I can't say enough about this division specifically. The Central was out of reach probably less than a month ago. And now it's only within 1 game as the Cleveland Guardians have won 10 straight games. The Detroit Tigers have lost 5 straight games and are 2-8 in their last 10 games. Insane to think about because truthfully, I've been on my podcast couple episodes ago saying that this was wraps. The Tigers had this in locks. Well, I spoke too soon. I should have waited at least a week or two to really decide what was going to happen. And sure enough, we got the Guardians in contention to take the division when they were at one point 10.5 games out, guys. It just is unreal. And also, they were in like third place. They were the Royals and them were going back and forth to second and third place. And now we have the I just can't. I can't. But it's gonna be fun to watch, guys. Coming down to the wire, been watching a couple Guardians games. They just walked it off a couple nights ago. Let's see if they can keep it going. Moving on to another crazy division in the AL West. The Seattle Mariners are now the head honchos of this division, leading the division over the Astros by 2 games. The Rangers are 7 games back now after they were kind of like 3-4 games back and battling with the Mariners, now losing last 6 straight losses for the Mariners. Not good there. Or sorry, for the Rangers. I apologize. But the Mariners are now in the top spot of the AL West, 2 games above the Astros. The Astros lost 2 straight games, but the Mariners are 9-1 in their last 10 games, as well as the Astros being 6-4 in their last 10. So that is going to be extremely interesting to see who finishes in those divisions and the top of those divisions. Man almighty. I'm salivating over the fact that, we got these crazy division races, all of them within 2 games in the AL. Now moving over to the NL side, we got the West as the Dodgers go ahead and clinch their playoff spot, but didn't clinch the division quite yet, but are 4 games ahead of the Padres. Pretty comfortable position. Obviously, the D-backs are in contention for a wild card spot, but are 10 games back in the division. So really, the Padres are the only ones that really can try and take over this division. But that doesn't really look like it's going to be happening the way the Padres have been playing baseball in the past week or 2. So it looks like it's the division, or the Dodgers division once again for God knows how many years. But they look to be the crowned NL West division champions as of right now. Now we move on to the NL East, and the Phillies really look to have this under wraps, going ahead and already clinching as well, and I think they clinched the division. Now 12 games ahead of the Mets. The Mets 4-6 in the last 10, but just really were struggling there a couple weeks ago and really lost stranglehold of this division. Once they were at top, then they lost it, and then they really just couldn't find their footing, and now find themselves 12 games back and clinging on to the 3rd wildcard spot, hoping and praying that they can find themselves in the postseason in October. The Marlins, the Braves, and the Nationals all mathematically eliminated, I believe so. But man, it's Marlins 9-1 in their last 10 games, though. That's pretty interesting. Now they're only 5 games back of a wild card, so this. Is it too little too late for the Marlins? Because at one point they were, in really prime position after the All-Star break, and then they just started losing games, and now they're starting to heat up again. So I don't know what's going to happen with that, but anything can happen, guys. I don't think their postseason berth is in their hands. It is out of their, control. But we will see. Moving on to the NL Central, the Milwaukee Brewers and the Chicago Cubs both clinched, but the Brewers lead the division by 7 games and look to clinch the division here soon. The Cubs also, like I said, clinched their postseason berth. 7 games back of the division, though, and the Reds really trying to find a way to get into the postseason, only a game back of the Mets right now. And at one point, they were 3, in the 3rd spot, finding themselves 3 places back of the last wild card spot. So they were really fluctuating, and all 3 teams were. The Diamondbacks, the Giants, and the Reds were all going 1-2-3, 1-2-3, 1-2-3 every other day. And now the Reds are back at the top spot, 1 game back. The Giants fall back to 3.5 games after they were a half game back, and the Diamondbacks were like a 1 game back 2 days ago and now fall to 2 games back. So it's just too much to even handle. Let's get into it. Wildcard standings right here. Like I said, Brewers, Phillies, Dodgers, all are leading their divisions. And then we got the Cubs, Padres, and Mets at the top of the wild card slots. But then, like I said, Reds, Diamondbacks, and Giants all fluctuating between 1, 2, and 3 of the last wild card spot. or outside of it, right? All fluctuating between each other to try and compete for that last wild card spot is what I should have said. But Reds 1 game back, Arizona Diamondbacks 2 games back, San Francisco Giants now 4 games back after they were only a half game back, and the Marlins now 5 games back, St. Louis 5 games back, Braves, Pirates, Nationals, Rockies I don't think are anywhere close gonna be contending. But man, a lot of teams right there in the NL, but there's no teams in the NL that have um sorry, but there's all the teams in the NL have clinched. No teams in the AL have clinched in all their divisions. So it's pretty nuts to think about it in that perspective, right? I'm not saying all the teams have clinched, but we got 4 teams. All the teams in the MLB that have clinched are on the NL side, is what I should have said as well. And the AL haven't had any teams to clinch just yet. Now moving to the AL side, Toronto Blue Jays, Seattle Mariners, and Detroit Tigers are all at the top of their divisions. But then we got the Yankees, Red Sox, Guardians, and Astros right now, all competing for those wild card spots. We got the Yankees and Red Sox right now at 1 and 2, and the Guardians and Astros going back and forth for that last wild card position because the Guardians are also a game behind in their division, but also have tied the Astros in record to gain that wild card spot now in the third slot. And the Astros now drop from their division lead into the third wild card spot because they're tied with the record, and now Mariners slide into that top spot for the division. It's just absolute craziness going on. Tons of teams going in and out, in and out, in and out of the the rotation of being in the third spot, being in the division lead, being in the third spot, being in the second spot, being in everywhere. And then really there really isn't any teams behind or below the dotted line to compete for that last wild card spot other than the Guardians and Astros, who whoever wins that tiebreaker, we'll see what happens. But right now, the Rangers and Royals are the only really 2 teams that can compete and make a late push with 5 games and 6 games back. But yeah, Tampa, Athletics, Orioles, Angels, Twins, and Sox all are just not in contention, but just wildness going on, y'all. Wildness going on throughout the entirety of the MLB. But like I said, shout out to the Cleveland Guardians, who are 1 game back and at one point 10.5 games back, and now on a 10-game win streak, and I feel are always in the mix at this time of year. Every year it seems they find a way to get themselves hot at the right time and go ahead and take the division or defeat a division winner as a wild card winner and make a deep run. Hence 2016 World Series loss to the Cubs. That was a year that you didn't see the Guardians or the Indians at that time going to the World Series. But we'll see what happens with that division, because that's just bonkers to me, y'all. Absolute bonkers. The Blue Jays are trying to cling to their lead over the Yanks in the AL East, and the Mariners series win over the Astros paid dividends as they now hold a 2-game lead in the division. In the NL West is the closest division in the NL, as the Padres are within 4 games, but the way that the Pods have been playing, it just seems that, it's out of grasps for the Pods. While the Phillies have ran away with the NL East as the Mets cling for dear life for their last wildcard spot, and the Brewers, well known as one of the best teams in baseball and record-wise, proves already clinching their postseason berth. And every team that has clinched, like I said, are from the NL side. Brewers, Cubs, Dodgers, Phillies are all clinched, and none from the AL side. And it's going to be interesting to see. We will see what happens at the end of this week, as this is the final week of baseball, guys. I cannot believe that the season is already over. It's unreal to think about, but the postseason baseball is finally here, and I'm juiced. And I pray my Padres don't choke it away and find a way to not be in the postseason. But they've done that before. 2023, sorry. So, let's see what happens, guys. It's going to be interesting and maybe heartbreaking for all parties involved. But now let's go into college football, as there were some scores from yesterday that need to be read off, y'all. That need to be read off. So let's get into it right here, right now. There's not too much that I want to get into, obviously, because I don't want to go through the full slate and take up all this time. But obviously, we got to go through a couple of some rivalry games that happened this past weekend. LSU went ahead and took out Southeast Louisiana 56-10. That was not a rivalry by any means, but LSU looks pretty darn good. Moving on to Miami at Florida at Miami, as this was a rivalry game, as the number 4 Hurricanes looked to take out the Gators and did so 26-7, as Carson Beck went 17 of 30, 160, and 1 interception. Not really like his Heisman a performance, but ultimately getting the dub over Florida, who has a gauntlet of a schedule. I understand Florida has that gauntlet of a schedule, and their record says 1-3, but they're playing really tough teams. They're probably not playing their best football, but that's just I wouldn't expect anybody to survive that schedule. So if you guys want to go ahead and look at Florida's schedule, it's just not fair whatsoever. Moving on to Oregon State at Oregon, as Oregon absolutely put BTA on Oregon State. Sorry, AJ, I didn't want to say that on airways, but 41-7. Oregon State now 0-4, as Oregon is 4-0. Corian Moore, 21-31, 305, 4 tutties. Man, goodness gracious, he might be a sleeper for Heisman candidate. Now moving on to Kent State goes to Florida State. Florida State looks for real this year, y'all. Obviously, they played Kent State, but this is what you want to do against Kent State. 66-10, guys. Man almighty. Look out for Florida State at the end of the year. Possibly could be a dark horse to win the national championship. And then we got Texas winning 55-0 over Sam Houston State. Indiana winning over Illinois in 63-10 in a ranked matchup, 9 versus 19. So that was also a Big Ten matchup. So that was a big time win for Indiana. Then Auburn and Oklahoma, I think, was the game of the day, truthfully, because we have quarterbacks that were, absolutely great. But truthfully, it was because of Jackson Arnold being a transfer from Oklahoma going to Auburn, and Auburn coming back to Oklahoma, Jackson Arnold being the head of them and trying to take out his former team, but they couldn't do so, as Mateer, a Heisman frontrunner at this point, goes out and takes him to a dub. Boomer Sooner, 24-17, is 24 of 36, 271 with 1 tutty. Like I said, Heisman frontrunner at this point. Moving on to Ole Miss, takes out Tulane 45-10, big time dub for them. Tennessee comes back and gets that dub after the last week loss to Georgia, 56-24. Texas Tech goes ahead and takes out Utah in a ranked matchup, 16-17, as both in the Big 12, but Texas Tech wins 34-10. Temple goes ahead into Georgia Tech looking to get the dub in the upset, but couldn't do so, losing 45-24. Vanderbilt absolutely didn't need to do this, but they put 70 on Georgia State, winning 70-21. Pavia had 245 passing, and this was another big-time matchup that I was hoping that my Huskers could go ahead and pull out, but they didn't do so, losing 27-30 in the big Lincoln, in the big... And it wasn't in the big house, but, the big red house, if you want to call it, in Lincoln, Nebraska. Dylan Raiola put on a show, 30 for 41, 308, 3 touchdowns, but couldn't get the dub as Bryce Underwood led his Michigan Wolverines into Nebraska, in Lincoln, Nebraska, and took them the full length of the game to go ahead and get that dub, 30-27 over Nebraska. And, man, I hope that, the Cornhuskers can continue to progress the way that they are, and we'll hopefully see them in some big-time games going forward. Moving on to an SEC matchup, as Missouri goes ahead and takes out South Carolina 29-20, even though Lenore Sellers had 18-28, 302 with 2 tutties, couldn't get the dub as Missouri takes them out. Moving on to Notre Dame, going ahead and taking out Purdue 56-30. Even though Notre Dame lost their first 2 games, they come out and put up 56 points against Purdue. And last but not least, USC, ranked in the top 25 now. Do not sleep on USC as they go ahead and take out Michigan State in a Big Ten matchup as 45-31 to round out the college football slate for this past Saturday. Or at least there's more games, but this is the slate that I was reading. Keep it short, keep it sweet. But obviously there's tons more games that were going on throughout the entire slate. But these were the kind of the big games, and ultimately the games that I felt like are going to matter down the line. But there'll be more games coming forward that we'll get into. But ultimately there's a ton of great football to be played here in the future. I'm excited about the Heisman frontrunners, to be honest. Like I said, Mateer looking great. I think Lenore Sellers, even though he doesn't have a record to back it up with his team, he's also playing great football. And we'll see what Carson Beck does. Obviously, he's a front runner right now because the Miami Hurricanes are doing well. But it is way too early to be said what and who is going to be the Heisman of this season. But I appreciate you guys tuning in to another episode of Jay's Point After, episode 49. And, man, wanted to keep it kind of short, kind of sweet. hope I did a good job, and I hope I can continue to have you guys, come back on here and watch all these episodes of Jay's Point After. But all that being said, have a great rest of your weekend. Have a great Sunday. Go ahead and watch some football, and I'll see you guys next week. We out.